Hotep. Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecture writer, and historian. So it is Saturday, December 4th, 2021, and we are live. So I wanted to come on for a few minutes and give a brief overview of an online course that I'm teaching today. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. So some of you may have heard about this class. You may have heard about me talk about it on my show, the African History Network show. You may have seen social media posts that I've done about it. So I wanted to give a brief overview of the class. It's a 10-week online course. We deal with thousands of years of we deal with history leading up to the Civil War, and we deal with history from 1865 to 1968, and we deal with some history leading up to the Civil War as well, starting in 1803 with the Louisiana Purchase. All right, so I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, all of that in the class, and it helps give a better understanding also of what's happening right now in this country, because we're still dealing with the legacy of the Civil War, and we're dealing with the legacy of the lost cause. The lost cause was an effort that starts after the Civil War ends, about somewhere around 125 years ago. It's been an effort for about the last 125 years to rewrite the history of the Civil War. Okay, and push this states' rights notion that the Civil War was fought because of states' rights, when really the South seceded from the Union to maintain slavery. All right. So some of the things we deal with in the class. Now, this is a 10-week online course. You can register for it at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll post a link here as well. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. So even after the class is over with, you can still go back and watch the entire course. It's regularly $130. It's on sale $50 right now. And we also have a bundle pack where you can register for 2 of my online courses for only $70. That's a $260 value. But some of the things we deal with, the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, which doubles the territory of the U.S. And we're going to see that things like the Louisiana Purchase are going to escalate the abolitionist movement. We're also going to see things like the Missouri Compromise of 1820, the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. These are things that are going to lead to the U.S. Civil War taking place. We see the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. And the Mexican-American War is going to end with what's known as the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And the U.S. is going to get the territory that makes up Arizona, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Nevada. The U.S. is going to get all that territory as a result of the Mexican-American War. And this is going to then also intensify the abolitionist movement. And you're going to have California coming to the Union as a free state. You're going to have, even though it wasn't part of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, you're going to have Texas coming to the Union in 1845 as a slaveholding state. But you're going to organize the land that was part of the that the U.S. gets as a result of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. You're going to have what's known as the Compromise of 1850, okay? And the Compromise of 1850 is going to consist of 5 bills. And one of those bills was the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which intensifies the abolitionist movement. It allows the sheriffs to deputize white people to track down fugitive slaves, and it strips them of the ability to be able to go to court to fight for their freedom, and they can capture runaway slaves in the North, running away from the South, and return them back to their slave owners. This causes more runaway slaves to go into Canada and helps intensify the abolitionist movement. And as a result of the, you're going to have things like the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 as well. And we just had that up here, I think. Yeah, the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 created the territories of Kansas and Nebraska and gave the right to decide whether or not to permit slavery when it joined the Union. Okay, so it left it up to those territories to determine whether or not they have slavery, as opposed to it being dictated by the federal government. And this infuriated a lot of abolitionists and intensifies the abolitionist movement also. And as a direct result of the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, you have the creation of the Republican Party in 1854, which was organized, founded by groups of abolitionists, okay, as a backlash to the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, to be a counter to the Democratic Party at the time, which was largely the party of the plantation owners, slave owners, things of this nature. So we're going to see what leads to the Civil War taking place. Then we go through and deal with we deal with things like Manifest Destiny. We deal with the U.S. Civil War, 1861, 1865, the Reconstruction Era, which is a really, really important piece of history, which is not really taught enough and not really talked about a lot. And this is a period of time when African Americans are showing America really how to have a democracy. Okay, the Reconstruction Era. And you're going to have the Reconstruction Amendments of the 13th Amendment, which legally ends slavery, the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, ratified December 6, 1865. When Georgia ratifies the 13th Amendment, you have the 14th Amendment of 1868, which gives citizenship rights to African Americans. You have the 15th Amendment of 1870, which guarantees the right to vote to African American men at that time, 1870. And you're going to have the acquisition of land by many African Americans, even though there's rapid discrimination when it comes to massive land giveaways like the Homestead Act of 1862 or the Southern Homestead Act of 1866. But you're going to have some type of acquisition of land that takes place. And during Reconstruction also, you're going to have about 2,000 African-American men elected to public office, especially in state legislatures. The majority of the state legislature, the majority of the people in state legislatures in South Carolina were African-American men. In Mississippi, you have a lot of African-Americans who are elected to the state legislature in Mississippi. And you're going to have Hiram Rhodes Revels, who becomes a U.S. Senator, first African-American U.S. Senator. He's from Mississippi in 1870, Hiram Rhodes Revels. All right. And at this time, the voters are not voting for U.S. senators. Okay. Voters don't start voting for U.S. senators until about 1914. For about the first 126 years or so, it was the state legislatures that appointed U.S. senators. The voters don't start voting for U.S. senators until right about 1914. Okay, so we have this history. Then we have the Freedmen's Bank created by an act of Congress, the Freedmen's Bank, which collapses in 1874, and we lose about $2.9 million worth of our deposits. We have Special Field Order number 15, 40 acres in the Mule, which we go in depth and deal with in the class, January 1865, which this was not land given to, promised to all former slaves. This was 400,000 acres of land in 400,000 acres of coastal land in Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida, divided into tracts of up to 40 acres. All right, so we go and deal with Special Field Order number 15, what it was. We talk about Juneteenth and the origins of Juneteenth and separate some fact from fiction, dealing with Juneteenth as well. And then we look at the Constitution amendments, the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment. We look at some U.S. Supreme Court cases like Williams versus Mississippi, 1898. Well, Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896. Before that, Plessy versus Ferguson, which legalized as separate but equal. And what we're going to see is after Reconstruction ends, we're going to see that you're going to have the state legislatures that start passing segregated laws when it comes to railroads, okay? When it comes to passenger cars, railroads, transportation. So we see the Tennessee state legislature, in 1881, they're going to segregate railroad passenger cars in Tennessee, 1881. That's followed by Florida in 1887, Mississippi in 1888, Texas in 1889, Louisiana 1890. Louisiana in 1890, the segregation of passenger cars with the law in Louisiana 1890 leads to what happens in 1892 when Homer Plessy refuses to give up his seat in the whites only section on a segregated railroad car. That leads to Plessy versus Ferguson 1896 U.S. Supreme Court case. We see Alabama, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Georgia are going to do the same thing in 1891. So we see after Reconstruction ends, and this is a really, really important period of history from 1865 to 1900, which puts us on a trajectory to where we are right now. And one of the things we do within the class is what's known as the Mississippi Plan of 1890, okay? And we'll come back to that in just a second here, the Mississippi Plan. We talk about Sarah Rector, of course, because you deal with the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866, and you deal with the allocation of land to the slaves that the 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans own, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. We see Sarah Rector is one of the most well-known cases of that land redistribution. You have the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866 and what's known as the Dolls Allotment Act of 1887, which was a reallocation of about 138 million acres of land. And that was supposed to go to Native Americans and Black Indians, and about 2/3 of the land goes to white people. But Sarah Rector was an Afro-American girl, or African-American girl in Oklahoma. And she was born on Creek Indian land, and her parents had been enslaved by had enslaved Creek Indian ancestry. Okay, her parents were former slaves of the Creek Indians, and they're going to get an allotment of land because of the Dolls Allotment Act and the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties. Oil is going to be discovered on Sarah Rector's land, and she becomes the richest, what was called the richest Afro-American girl in the country. Okay, she becomes a millionaire when she's like 12 years old. All right. So we deal with the 15th Amendment. And one of the interesting things about the U.S. Constitution is that nowhere in the U.S. Constitution does it explicitly give anyone the right to vote, even though the 15th Amendment guarantees the right to vote. And the 19th Amendment, which guaranteed the right to vote to women, and the 26th Amendment of 1971, which lowered the minimum age to vote from 21 to 18. The 19th Amendment and 26th Amendment, the structure of it was modeled after the 15th Amendment, but nowhere in the U.S. Constitution does it explicitly give anyone the right to vote, even though the 15th Amendment guarantees the right to vote. There was a really good article from Smithsonian Institute that came out February 3rd, 2020. Now, February 3rd, 2020 was the 150th anniversary of the ratification of the 15th Amendment and adoption of the 15th Amendment of 1870, which guaranteed the right to vote for African-American men. So these are some of the things we deal with in the class, and then we deal with, the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, which is still in effect today, even though it was weakened by the U.S. Supreme Court around 1875, I think it was. The U.S. Supreme Court weakened part of it, but it's still on the books today. We deal with the Freedmen's Bureau, the Freedmen's Bank, but when we deal with some of the massacres as well that took place, the Vicksburg Massacre of 1874, Eufaula Massacre 1874 as well, Opelousas Massacre 1868. And a lot of these massacres involve politics and intimidating African Americans, trying to keep us from voting. Segregation and public transportation, we talked about that. Also North Carolina 1899, Virginia 1900, Maryland 1904, Oklahoma 1907. And then you're going to have a rewriting of state constitutions to impose segregation, but also to target African Americans and to suppress our vote. And Mississippi was notorious for this. And what Mississippi implemented became known as the Mississippi Plan, and this is going to be adopted by other states. South Carolina 1895, Louisiana 1898. Louisiana is also going to institute the grandfather clause, okay, which basically stated that if your grandfather could not vote prior to 1867, then you can't vote, and that's because of slavery, okay. If your grandfather prior to 1867, if your grandfather couldn't vote, most likely it's because he was a slave. Okay, so that means that you can't vote. And these were obstacles. What these southern states are trying to do is implement obstacles to the 15th Amendment to suppress the African American vote, to turn back the progress we were making during Reconstruction. Okay, so you have to understand this chronology of history. What we do in the class is each class we go through and analyze approximately a 10-year period of history. We go through this history chronologically. There's a timeline of history that we look at. Then we deal with articles, video clips, all of this, book references. Okay. Name of the class is From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Normally we have class today. As soon as I finish this broadcast, normally we do it about 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're starting a little later today. The class is on sale, $50, regularly $130. But we also have a special bonus where you can register for both of the online courses that I teach. This one, as well as the Moors and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade. I teach that one on Sundays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a special bundle where you can register for both of those classes today for only $70. Okay, so they're regularly $130 each. That's a $260 value for only $70. We're going to post a link here. We also have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And you can use this information with your children. The classes are very visual as well. I don't do a lot of cursing, it's not crazy, things like this. You can watch them around the world. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch them anytime. So a year from now, if you want to go back and watch the entire 10-week online course, you can do that. You'll have access to that. Okay. So these are some of the things that we deal with. And we have a live text chat in class, so you can ask questions. Now in class, it's not like a Zoom meeting, like at your job, okay, where you can see everybody. You can see me, I can't see you. Okay, so you don't have to worry about trying to get dressed for class or anything like that. And we have a live text chat, so you can ask questions during class also. And you can email me after class if you have any questions as well. Okay, so some of the other things we deal with are the Black Exodus of 1879 to Kansas, where you have about 6,000 African Americans going to Kansas because of the results of the Louisiana state elections in 1878, and Democrats taking back control of the state legislature. We deal with Williams versus Mississippi, 1898, which is a U.S. Supreme Court case challenging what happened in Mississippi in 1890 at the Mississippi State Convention. And the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the poll taxes and literacy test that Mississippi put in place did not violate the U.S. Constitution, and because these were obstacles to the 15th Amendment. All right. So what happened in Mississippi in 1890? African Americans made up the majority population in Mississippi. And we see what's taking place in Mississippi right now. In Mississippi, with the challenge to abortion, to the Roe versus Wade, and they're coming out of Mississippi. And Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the country, Republican controlled as well, one of the poorest states in the country. But at the 1890 Mississippi State Convention, a new constitution was adopted that included a literacy test and a poll tax for eligible voters, a literacy test and a poll tax for eligible voters. Under the new literacy requirement, a potential voter had to be able to read any section of the Mississippi state constitution or understand any section when read to him or give a reasonable interpretation of any selection. Now, this was all designed to suppress the African-American vote. Okay. And this is what it did in Mississippi. This was all designed to suppress the African-American vote. And it worked in Mississippi. And you're going to see a change in the Mississippi state legislature. Okay. And African-Americans are going to be ran out of the Mississippi state legislature. Now, this became known as the Mississippi Plan. Okay. The convention was presided over by a white county judge named Solomon Saladin Calhoun. All right. And when asked about the convention, when asked about why they were there, what was the purpose of the convention, he said, "We came here to exclude the Negro." Okay. And this is exactly what they did. James Vardaman served in the Mississippi legislature at the time of the convention in 1890 and later became governor of the state. He said, "There is no use to equivocate or lie about the matter." He said, "In Mississippi, we have in our constitution legislated against the racial peculiarities of the Negro. When that device fails, we will resort to something else. When that device fails, we will resort to something else." The impact of the legislation in 1890 in Mississippi was swift. By 1910, registered voters among African Americans dropped to 15% in Virginia and under 2% in both Alabama and Mississippi, according to historian Donald G. Nyman in his book Promises to Keep African Americans and the Constitutional Order, 1776 to the present. History.com has a really good article, which is the official website of the History Channel. They have a really good article dealing with how Jim Crow era law suppressed the African American vote for generations. And what we see is after Reconstruction ends, and we see that Democrats taking back control of the state legislatures, then rewriting the state constitutions to codify white supremacy. One of the things we're going to talk about is what happened in Alabama in 1901. We'll talk about that in class today, and the rewriting of the Alabama state constitution. Okay. Now, this is before the party realignment that starts in 1928 with what's known as the Lily White movement in 1928. And Republicans are pushing African Americans out of the Republican Party, and African Americans slowly go over to the Democratic Party, even before 1964 Civil Rights Act. Okay, a lot of people are under the misconception. I've done a 3-hour lecture dealing with the whole history of why African Americans switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. People are under the misconception that it was because of the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65. No, that goes back 40 years prior to what's known as the Lily White movement of 1928. When Republicans were trying to get Herbert Hoover elected as president in the 1928 presidential election. And Herbert Hoover was running against a moderate Northern Democrat named Al Smith. And Republicans appealed to segregationist Democrats in 5 former Confederate states to get their vote, to get them to vote for Herbert Hoover. And Republicans were ignoring the issues and concerns of African Americans, the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, which was rejuvenated after the movie The Birth of a Nation, which debuted February 8th, 1915. And the Ku Klux Klan had largely died out by 1915. They were founded December 24th, 1865 in Pulaski, Tennessee, late in the same month that the 13th Amendment was ratified. So the Klan had largely died out by 1915. They're going to be rejuvenated by a man named Reverend William Joseph Simmons, okay, who sees the movie The Birth of a Nation, and he sees it in late 1915. and he rejuvenates the Klan. And you're going to have both Democrats and Republicans that are going to be part of the second incarnation of the Ku Klux Klan. Okay, so you have a rise in the power of the Klan. We see this in 1921 with the Tulsa Race Massacre in 1921, the attack on Black Wall Street. The Klan was instrumental in that. We go back, we look at 1923. We see the Klan instrumental in the attack in Rosewood, January 1923, the Rosewood Massacre that John Singleton did the movie about with Rosewood starring Ving Rhames, okay, with the Rosewood Massacre, okay, that's in Florida, 1923. The Ku Klux Klan was instrumental in that as well. Okay, so we see that the Republicans are going to start ignoring the concerns and needs of African Americans, and we're going to slowly go over to the Democratic Party because we saw them more receptive to our issues. We saw President Roosevelt, even though we were leery of Roosevelt, we saw him more receptive to our issues than the Republicans were. Okay, so this is before 1964. This is before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. By 1960, 2/3 of African Americans had already switched over to the Democratic Party. All right, now, so you really have to understand this history. This history from 1865 through 1968, and even up to today, but especially that period of time, 1865 to 1968, is a crucial period of history to understand where we are today and how we got here, to understand where we need to go from here, what needs to take place after this. Okay, and understanding these laws and policies that were put in place to put us in the predicament we're in today. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. This is what politics is. Voting is only one small part. It's an important part, extremely important part. All you have to do is look at the makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court, 6-3 conservative Supreme Court, and Supreme Court justices are nominated by presidents who are elected. Okay, even though people are under the misconception that the Electoral College chooses the president. Okay, but that's based upon winning. That's based upon getting 270 Electoral College votes. How do you get 270 Electoral College votes? You get 270 Electoral College votes by winning the popular vote in a state, because Electoral College votes are associated with each state. Michigan has 16. Now it's going to change because of the results of the 2020 census. And Michigan loses one Electoral College vote. New York loses one Electoral College vote because the census results and the Electoral College are connected. And because we haven't read the U.S. Constitution, a lot of us don't understand how any of this works. Okay, but you win the Electoral College votes associated with a state by winning the popular vote in the state, which is why in the 2016 presidential election, this is why Republicans worked so hard to suppress the African American vote in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and some other key battleground states, but especially with Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So that election was held November 8th. Donald Trump ends up getting 306 Electoral College votes. Donald Trump ends up winning Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania by 78,000 popular votes. Hillary Clinton gets 3 million more popular votes nationwide, but she loses Michigan by 10,704 votes. She loses Wisconsin, Pennsylvania by a very small margin. Donald Trump wins those Electoral College votes associated with those three battleground states, puts them over 270. Early the next morning, November 9th, Hillary Clinton concedes. Donald Trump becomes president-elect. Well, it wasn't because of the Electoral College, because the Electoral College didn't vote. I think it was either December 16th or December 19th in 2016 with Electoral College votes when they voted, because the Electoral College does not vote until the first Monday following the second Wednesday in December. But it's based upon the Electoral College votes associated with a state. You win those Electoral College votes associated with the state by winning the popular vote in the state. Republicans understand that, many of us don't, which is why they work so hard to suppress our vote. especially in those key battleground states. So we're being outmaneuvered on the political chessboard because we don't understand the rules to the game. So the first thing you want to do is read the U.S. Constitution, because it's all explained in the U.S. Constitution. And also you can go to loc.gov, Library of Congress website, loc.gov, or archives.gov, National Archives. Read the U.S. Constitution there as well. Okay, this book here has the U.S. Constitution and other important documents, the Declaration of Independence and other great documents of American history, 1775 to 1865. So U.S. Constitution is here, the Bill of Rights, 1791, U.S. Constitution drafted 1787, voted on 1787 at the Philadelphia Convention. All this history comes together. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. All this is connected. I'm all for economic empowerment. My degree's in business administration. I understand that better than most people because I taught entrepreneurship for 7 years. But your economic empowerment is shaped by the economy. The economy is shaped by laws and policies. All this comes together. So as one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffrey, says, we have to have a synthesis of the African history and culture, which gives us our foundation. It gives us our VIPs, our values, our interests, and our principles. And this gives us a cultural paradigm that we see reality through. But we also have to understand the two sides of the pyramid: economic empowerment and political empowerment. Okay, they all come together. We'll wrap up with this slide here. You can join us in class. How you all like this type of information? How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. And you can use this information with your children as well. I would say the information is PG-13, but it's not vulgar. I don't do a lot of cursing. People know me. I don't do a lot of cursing. I don't use racial epithets. I don't even call our people the N-word. So people know this. All right. So this is the pyramid principle. We'll wrap up with this here for one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Many of you have seen the numerous interviews I've done with he and another one of my teachers, Professor James Small. But when they teach, they talk about the pyramid principle. The foundation of the pyramid is African history and culture. That gives us our VIPs, our values, our interests, and our principles. This gives us a cultural paradigm that we see reality through. People's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past and the present and the future to meet the needs of the community. Your self-esteem, self-development, self-worth, all that comes from our history and culture. The two sides of the pyramid are economic empowerment and political empowerment. Political empowerment deals with politics and us controlling the politics in our community as well. Okay, and being able to push our political agenda and get policies put in place that are beneficial to us. All right. So we have to have a synthesis of all of this. It's not just African history and culture. It's not just eating African foods and speaking African languages and playing djembe drums and things like this. That's important. But the foundation is history and culture. But we have to have a synthesis of all this. Your history and culture influences how you engage in economics. Okay. Do you dress up white capitalism in red, black, and green and pass that off as economic empowerment? Or do you deal with African concepts like the cooperatives, the co-op systems, which were concepts that we brought here, especially from West Africa? And if you read Dr. Jessica Gordon-Emhard's book, Collective Courage, which is around here somewhere, I bought a bookshelf here for the office. And I think I need 2 or 3 more bookshelves because I have books all around me. Right here. Collective Courage by Dr. Jessica Gordon-Emhard. So I interviewed her back in about 2014. And this book deals with the rich history of African Americans and cooperative economics in this country. The co-ops we had, the Colored Merchants Association, 1928, coming out of the National Negro League, started by Booker T. Washington in 1900. The Colored Farmers Union started around 1886 or so in Texas and grows to have 1.2 million members. This book right here deals with a rich history of cooperative economics and how we use that to fight against white supremacy and racism and things like that. Okay. So it's a deep, deep, rich history that we have. All right. So if you like this type of information, and how's everybody doing? Follow us here on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. The class is taught at our online school. It's not taught here on Facebook and YouTube. If you like this type of information, we'll post a link here again. You can register for this online course. You can join us in class today. We have we have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. When you scroll down the page, you'll see the information for my radio show. I'm on 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m., 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF, and we broadcast here on my social media platforms. We have a special bundle pack offer. You can register for From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power that I do on Saturdays, and also Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understand the Transatlantic Slave Trade that I do on Sundays. You can both for only $70. That's a $260 value. If you just want to register for the one class From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement, that's on sale $50, regularly $130. And we'll post a link here again. As soon as you register, you can start watching the content. You can watch the classes we did last week. And we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch them anytime. Okay, so look, we have to get out of here. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, email me at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. Email me at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com if you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization. Dr. King Day, Kwanzaa, African American History Month, Christmas. I have a presentation dealing with the origins of Christmas as a historical presentation. And then if you want me to speak at your event or something like that, email me as well. And these online courses that I teach, if you want me to teach one of these classes for your organization, for your church, or what have you, we can do that as well. We can do it either in person and modify it for time constraints. It's normally 10 weeks, but we can modify for time constraints, or we can do it virtually as well. So I can do a virtual class tailored for your group or organization also. Email me at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. All right. And if you'd like this type of information, you want to support the African History Network, you can do so also. $, the AHN Show through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me/ the AHN Show, paypal.me/ the AHN Show. Okay, so it helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, do the radio show 6 days a week, etc. And this is our official Cash App account. Let me just put this up here because there's some fake African History Network Cash App accounts out there as well that I saw, and I've been trying to get them taken down. So this is our official Cash App account, $, the AHN Show, SHOW. When you go to it, it shows my name. It says Michael, shows my picture there, and shows in our official Cash App tag is $, the AHN Show, SHOW. These other ones are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. That's not us. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you.